It's a scary thing to have the United States walk away from a rules-based international order that's held the world together for eight decades. And now that's gone. And we don't know what's holding the world together. I don't think America goes back to constitutional norms and values. I think America is going to be defined by the next emperor. We have become Rome, and we're going to transition from one emperor to the next emperor to the next emperor. And American society is adapting to that.
My assessment of the American people right now, of your young people in the Gen Z, is your people are sexed out. That's how I describe them.
A sex tape used to be something, it was designed to embarrass. I just think, again, Zionism used mechanisms of influence and control that were premised on a way of life that no longer exists. This dictator can shut down any media establishment he wants to. So when Super Jew at American Media Institute X, Y, and Z says, Donnie, baby, I want you, he goes, you lost your license. And what's Super Jew going to do? Nothing.
MSNBC and Barry Weiss are on notice. You're scaring them.
Barry Weiss could be crushed like a bug. Israel now is trying to convince Donald Trump, according to some reports, that the price will be extraordinarily high, but that they can survive if the regime is eliminated. So Israel's at the point where they're willing to make an existential gamble that they can absorb what normally would be lethal amounts of damage if the regime is removed. But the gamble there is what happens if the regime isn't removed. And the United States agreed on the rules called the Constitution of the United States of America, and we had a nation worth defending. And when we walk away from the Constitution, we cease becoming that which we aspire to, and we become nothing more than an empire which, frankly speaking, deserves to crumble.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back to the Eon Podcast. We have the privilege and unique honor of hosting a former Marine, weapons inspector, all in all great guy, Scott Ritter. Sir, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Not so well, I suspect, like yourself. The situation that we have on hand, like people like you who've spent your lifetime talking about nuclear disarmament, talking about speaking across the aisle with Russia, with China, about creating a new and better world than the liberal world order that we had, where the hegemonic powers shifted from Europe into America, which is a heck of a responsibility, and which America has burdened with dignity at times, and at times in a very disappointing fashion, much to the chagrin of people like you or patriots. Where we are right now with Mr. Trump, we were promised the anti-war president, and we got the peace deal president. Pakistan just signed on in a very spectacular and loud fashion to the new Gaza Peace Board, which I've heard the buy-in is $1 billion. And this is where we are. Scott Ritter, I think I've done enough to tell you. I don't need to tell you, but where do we stand as Pakistan, and where do you stand as America?
Well, before I talk about Pakistan, let me talk about America, because you always should come out of a foundation of that is closer to home. The American Constitutional Republic is in a state of crisis. And now, I oftentimes find that people overseas are far more informed and educated about the reality of America than Americans themselves. The sad truth of the matter is, if every American citizen, in order to retain their citizenship, had to take a test on the United States Constitution, even if we lowered the standard to 60% as passing, the vast majority of Americans would fail. To become a citizen in the United States, you have to take a test on the Constitution where passing is 100%. So the naturalized citizens, American citizens, know more about the Constitution than those Americans who were born with the privilege of being Americans. And we can make fun of that. I mean, I saw your smile, and it's of course, it's like, but we reap what we sow. There was a movie, The Bridge of Spies. I always hate to refer to movies, but sometimes the script writers get it right. And Tom Hanks is talking to a CIA agent in in Berlin, where he's getting ready to negotiate an exchange of spies. And the CIA agent says, there are no rules here. Don't play by a rule book here, because we're the CIA, we're in Berlin, there are no rules. And Tom Hanks said, you're an American, I'm an American, where are you from? And he mentioned his name, it's a German name. And then he said, I'm Irish. He said, we have nothing in common, nothing. And the same holds with the vast majority of Americans. We have nothing in common except one thing, the Constitution. That's the rule book that links us as a nation, that makes us who we are. Because otherwise, we are from where we came. But people came to America to start a new life. It's not a new life that's premised upon allegiance to a king or allegiance to a noble family or centuries of tradition. It was a new life based upon the promise that all men are created equal, and that we are unified by a collective understanding that we have to have rules. And these rules, define who we are. It's a new definition of what it means to be an American. This is why somebody from Pakistan can be just as an American as somebody from Germany. Somebody from China can be just as an American as somebody from, Syria. It doesn't matter where you came. The only thing matters is who you are today. That doesn't mean you turn your back on your on your forefathers. Of course not. You respect it. We have Irish American associations. We have Polish American associations, German American associations. People celebrate where they came from, but who they are today is not defined by their past, but by their present. Their present is solely defined by the Constitution of the United States. That's what makes us a constitutional republic. And without that, we're nothing. And today we have a president who has turned his back on the Constitution. He openly mocks the Constitution. He mocks the notion of the rule of law. He mocks absolutely international law. And I'll bring up this point because, when we speak of law, it's the details that matter. Because many Americans are going to say, I'm an American, I believe in the Constitution, but I don't believe in that United Nations Charter. That's international law. We don't allow them foreigners to come in and dictate to us. Excuse me, you ignorant fool. But the United Nations Charter is a treaty that was negotiated actually by the United States and imposed on the world at the end of the Second World War. We wanted this treaty, but our president signed it, and it was ratified by 2/3 of the United States Senate, which constitutionally means it is the supreme law of the land. So when you say you don't believe in international law, you're saying I don't believe in the Constitution. And if you believe that you do believe in the Constitution but don't believe in international law, that means you're ignorant of the Constitution, and I don't know what's worse, not believing it or believing in something that you actually don't believe in because you don't understand it. We are in a crisis today in America. It's a crisis of identity where we have taken a system that's based upon checks and balances, where an executive branch is balanced by a legislative branch and a judiciary, and the same holds true. No single branch can emerge dominant, but today we are ruled by an executive who no longer identifies himself as, a man beholden to the Constitution, but rather as a cult of personality. Donald Trump is a cult of personality. And that's not a good thing for the United States, and it's not a good thing for the world. So now we can move to Pakistan. Pakistan's a sovereign state, and I'm not here to, I can report on Pakistan, but I'm not here to pass judgment on Pakistan. Not my job, not my place. You have your own history, you have your own issues, your own problems, and you will have your own solutions to those problems. And they are many, as you know. But on the global stage, Pakistan, like all other nations today, is a signatory to the United Nations Charter. You are part of an international community defined by that charter. And you aspire to adhere to that charter imperfectly at times, as we all do, but at the end of the day, you try to stay on track. But it's hard to do when the charter is linked to an organization that is dominated by the United States of America. You lead by example. And when the United States foregoes international law, foregoes the charter, that means that everything that the world thought they were aligning themselves with no longer applies. And I just have to say that Pakistan signing on to Trump's peace board is extraordinarily disappointing. I know why they did it. It's about survival. You've got this insane person over there saying things and doing things, and you have to survive. But I'm sure the Pakistanis are aware that Donald Trump, in announcing the peace board, basically said it's a replacement for the United Nations, that the United Nations has failed. So what Pakistan just did in signing on to the peace board is they signed on to American narcissism, to an American egomaniac, to the American cult of personality. And as an American, I condemn that action. As a Pakistani, I would understand it, survival. But you just basically helped prop up that which is basically as un-American an entity as one could imagine. An American president is only president because of the Constitution. He's not the president. He's the president of a constitutional republic. We have a dictator now. We have a self-anointed emperor. We haven't seen anything like this since Napoleon took the crown away from the Pope and crowned himself Emperor of France. We have a man now who has not only crowned himself to be Emperor of the United States, but in Davos crowned himself to be Emperor of the world. And it's not an empire built on principle. At least Napoleon had Napoleonic law. This is empire built on greed. Straight up greed. Did you hear what he said about Switzerland in his speech in Davos? The insulting manner in which he addressed the Swiss people. And the entire relationship was predicated on one thing and one thing only, and that's American economic dominance and Switzerland's willingness to subjugate themselves to American economic dominance. This is what Pakistan has just signed themselves up for. You now joined a peace board. I saw that Pakistan last September had entered into a bilateral defense relationship with Saudi Arabia. Fascinating arrangement that appears to have a cause and effect relationship, even though they deny it, based upon Israel's attack on Qatar and the desire that you have to constrain Israeli excesses. So you now have a defense pact that includes an Article 5-like clause about collective self-defense. An attack against one is an attack against all. And since Pakistan has nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia de facto got the Pakistani nuclear umbrella to safeguard itself against a nuclear-armed Israel. And this is a good thing. I mean, it's sad that it has to come to this, but because the United States won't constrain Israel, because the rule of law doesn't apply to Israel, treaty relationships like this are necessary. And now, it's my understanding that there's consideration being given to enlarge this relationship, not to alter it, but to have a separate trilateral relationship between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. Turkey's a NATO member, last time I checked, that already has their own Article 5 protections. So why would Turkey need to have a Middle East version of NATO? It's because of the failure of the system, because of Israel's irresponsible behavior in Syria, in Lebanon. And this makes sense. But you know who's against this? Daddy. You know who I'm talking about. Because you just said that you're daddy's little boy. You just said, "Hi, Daddy. I want to live in your basement. Hi, Daddy. I don't want to be independent. Hi, Daddy. I don't want to have a job where I have my own income, but I want your allowance. Hi, Daddy. Tell me what to do." That's what Pakistan did in signing on to this peace board. You just basically said that Daddy's in charge. And Daddy's not going to let you have a trilateral relationship between Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, where there's a Pakistani nuclear umbrella being put over the Middle East. Daddy's going to ask you to push that back. And are you capable of doing that? Is Pakistan just playing a game, a word game, a yes game, saying something to buy time while they figure out what to do, to hold off for 3 years until Donald Trump's out of office? I don't know, but it's a dangerous game to be played because this is a madman. And unless Pakistan has 3 years of economic resilience built in, America can crush you like a bug anytime we want to.
The last time around, so what you've characterized is in the personification of Donald Trump is what we would here in Pakistan view as the universal standard for the Americans with which we've had. The last time we had an international financial setup in the form of the BCCI, when we developed nuclear weapons and subsequently proliferated them. Pakistan is a serial proliferator of nuclear weapons in the past. America clamped down with sanctions, like you said, we can squeeze you like a bug, and America tried. The Kerry bill came in, BCCI was shut down because we got too big for our boots, because Citibank was shaking in their boots, and we were trying to buy out America, the first American bank. We were also trying to bail out Pinochet, by the way. So a lot of those things were not well received. You know, we were in that role again. And again, this was a formal ratification of something that already is a given, that the Gulf center, Saudi, gets the nuclear umbrella from Pakistan. We have joint defense agreements, have always had them. We've trained their military, their air force, their airlines, you name it, where their labor force, where, you know, we have this historical relationship with them, as you're well aware. It's simply a formal recognition of something, like you said, and a cause and effect from the response to the attack in Qatar. But what you're personifying in the individual of Trump, and I understand that from a domestic perspective, why you would say that as an American, that it's very un-American that you have somebody who is deriding the Constitution and very openly, you know, besmirching international law and making fun of your allies and so on, and then, you know, bullying them into obeying him. But that's been the American state always. Like, they've never been, like you said it in the Kuwait, you know, Desert Storm, you said, I think we're fighting the wrong Arabs, sir. You said that to your CEO. And then we saw it in Enduring Freedom and in the invasion of Afghanistan. And we saw it back in the day in Vietnam. We saw it with, you know, the banana republics in South America. There's been no point since America negotiated what we call international law into being post-World War II, that there hasn't been a time where America has led by example in the way that you said that you would think is ideal. And again, like you said, imperfectly, lip service was paid to the idea of an international law. But now America is openly sort of, you know, but since the invasion of Iraq, it's been kind of openly, you know, not, when is the interest of America ever, you know, subservient to what the international order requires? It's not been the case. And across the globe, with the collapse of this order, like you saw in the rhetoric given out by the Canadian Premier at WEF, when public institutions which give very formal statements like the Office of the Premier, like the foreign offices, the lip service that they used to give to the UN is gone, then at that point, we will return to a tribalism. And in that tribalism, call it the Sunni crescent, call it whatever, it's Turkey, it's Saudi, it's Pakistan, and next online is most likely going to be Egypt. We've also had deal negotiations with the Haftar group in Libya. We're also meddling in Sudan and Somalia on behalf of the Saudis, as well as in Yemen. We're all starting to get involved in our region. So I think the lip service here in the case is to daddy, the new Donald Trump. It's not real. I think Pakistan is, or any other Muslim country right now, is putting out rhetoric to sort of get through this phase, whatever this is, this new phase. That's my suspicion. What comes of this? And
No, I don't disagree with you. In fact, as I raised that, you heard me. I said maybe Pakistan's just saying it to put a marker on the table to buy time for 3 years. But the question is, what's going to happen in those 3 years?
We have a detente with the Indians because in the last May conflict, the engagement, we showed off Chinese technology. It was impressive. The world acknowledged it. The Saudis saw it. The Gulf saw it. Europe saw it. So we've bought a couple of years from our principal existential sort of crisis with India.
What happens when we pull all the World Bank loans? When the IMF leaves, when you have no foreign capital, when your economy collapses, now what are you going to do?
Here's the funny thing about Pakistan. The Pakistani economy, when you compare it to Indonesia or India, who are averaging at about 40% interaction on the global scale, Pakistan is less than 20, both imports and exports. Our balance of trade payments problem is like minute. It's because Pakistan's economy primarily exists outside of the ambit of a regular economy. Our official GDP is $330 billion. But I suspect it's a lot more. Pakistan's economy is primarily in the cash flow, in border smuggling and the like, and it seems to be a state policy, and I think it worked out for the better. We just cleaned up our act when it came to like watchdogs like the FATF and other kind of financial institutions breathing down our necks. But in essence, Pakistan is fine financially. The state is not. Do you see the dichotomy there? It's like a weird. And I mean, America is also like all the major capitals in the world are pretty much. Hasn't the global economy just been money laundering and drugs and guns or whatever?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's no. I'm not going to defend it. I just look again. I'm not an expert on the Pakistani economy.
No, 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 no.
My understanding was that there were that there was an issue with having foreign currency reserves that would
There
enable
is.
you to buy
There is.
energy that would enable your
Yeah.
economy to function, and that you only survived because of the intervention of the World Bank and IMF, who provided
Our
loans.
our boom
And
bust cycle is
that
how
to me
impressive
indicates
America finds us. Yeah. That's our boom bust
that
cycle.
indicates a point of vulnerability that the United States can exploit at any time. I mean, when you look at the membership of this peace board, one of the founding members is the head of the World Bank. So if you don't think for a moment that Donald Trump couldn't call up this person who's now on Donald Trump's board and say, shut her down when it comes to Pakistan, of course they can. I'm very happy to hear that Pakistan has economic resilience and they can survive such nonsense, because I'm not somebody who promotes that kind of interference in the sovereign affairs of a nation. But my only point is this. It's the same point I make to Canada. I heard Carney's great speech about how he is now going to become the best friends with China. I think he forgets that Canada just a few years ago arrested a senior Chinese, leader of industry and held her hostage. The Chinese haven't forgotten, but I remind Canada to just reacquaint themselves with a map and understand that China is many, many thousands of miles that way, and the United States is right there, and that we own you. We own Canada. We can crush Canada anytime we want. The Canadian military just did a review where they talked about how they could resist an American invasion. They said, we can't. We can't. And then they're talking about a Taliban type of resistance to America. The Canadians doing Taliban. No. And this is the reality of Canada. This is the reality of Europe. This is the reality of the world. There's very few nations. Russia and China stand alone, maybe even India, but India has shown surprising weakness in the face of American, economic bullying. There's very few nations that can truly stand with Russia. Has shown you can sanction Russia to death, but because of a good relationship with China and then indirectly with other nations, Russia not only has survived but thrived. But Canada can't do that, and Europe can't do that. There's not too many nations that can do that. And
France and Germany will try, but they don't have the juice. They don't have the sauce.
They
don't have the sauce.
France and Germany, no, they can't. I just find it again. I apologize. I found something all over the map, but man, we're living in weird times. I mean, these are unprecedented, strange times, and I just I reflect on the words of the Europeans now as they look to China for their salvation, and I just want to remind van der Leyen and Merz and others that it wasn't too long ago that they were going to China to inform the Chinese that they were being de-risked. That because at the orders of Daddy America, they said you gotta restrict your relationship with China. You can't be too dependent upon Chinese economic. Why? Well, at that time they thought, well, that's okay. Daddy wants us to obey the house rules. But it just was that America was saying that we need to dominate every aspect of your society so that we control everything, which we do. I mean, the sad fact of the day is Europe controls nothing. We control everything. We can pinch them off at any point we want to. And now they're running back to China, but it's too late. It's too late for Canada. It's too late for Europe. I hope it's not too late. I mean, the good news for Pakistan is you have good relations with China. That's very good news. And it's because no matter what America does, one of the bad things, I guess it's a scary thing to have the United States walk away from a rules-based international order that's held the world together for eight decades. I'm not saying held the world together perfectly. We know it wasn't perfectly, but it held the world together. And now that's gone. and we don't know what's holding the world together. But in many ways, it's got to be liberating for a Pakistani to sit there and say, wait a minute, daddy's kicking me out of the basement so I can finally go get that Chinese job I always wanted. And I can get that Chinese income I always wanted. And I can declare independence from daddy. I mean, it's liberating. On the other hand, Europe, of course, they don't have the same thing. But again, and I apologize if I'm oversimplifying this, but it just seems to me that the Chinese-Pakistani economic corridor is no longer just a line on the map that Americans draw just to get themselves angry. Look at that. What are they doing? It's reality now. There is a linkage between China and Pakistan that gives Pakistan resilience.
It gives us a fighting chance. We tried our best to piss off the Chinese, by the way, back in the day. Never put it past Pakistan to screw up like massively like this. It's very unfortunate. We were very dead set on the CPEC project as a part of the larger Belt and Road Initiative, which I remember The Economist or somebody deemed the biggest financial blunder of the 21st century, which was hilarious to me because the century's just started. We got car plants, we got power plants, we got all these industrial setups. Right now, the electricity you and I are probably, I'm consuming on my end is directly coming from a Chinese power plant. And I know where it is. I can point to you exactly which one. We got access to a domestically assembled and now burgeoning chip and mobile market because of all the Chinese phones. We're not as dependent on the Android or Apple systems anymore. We're assembling laptops and the like. So, and then obviously the apex of that is the JF-17 Thunder and the air defense technology, with which we were able to target Russian S-400s, as well as Israeli Hebron drones, as well as French Rafales or Rafales, whatever you guys call them. So it's
just
not
French airplanes.
They're French airplanes, They're not freedom planes, as George Bush Jr. would put them as. So they're not French fries; they're freedom fries now. Yeah. So how aggressive could the frogs? I'm just messing with you. So those French airplanes, and at its core, even though we've pissed China off many times, I think long term it's inevitable because we're joined at the hip and we have historical, cultural ties and so on. And then the deal with India, and this may detente since our struggle with India has been actually, I would say, a unique moment since the war on terror, where Pakistan was always being asked to do more in Afghanistan's case. And it was a very brief period, like a honeymoon period that we had with Trump, where we nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize and so on. But I think the bigger prize that the Americans have in the region is India. And I think we've sort of delivered India once more, like we did back in the 90s in Kargil. We've delivered them on a silver platter. They're softened up. The European tech didn't work out for them. And, now they're going to have to vie for American technology if they want to beat back Pakistan and Kashmir or whatever. So when it comes to the containment of China, Pakistan could never be it. We could never be the guy. But like you said, there's clearly some amount of freedom that Trump is allowing all of us to exercise it since the Clinton days, I would say. We haven't had that kind of room. Whether it's Turkey in Syria, clearly Trump he even acknowledged it. He said, he's a really smart guy, Erdogan. He's my friend, He clearly managed to take over. People have been trying for thousands of years. Everything is thousands of years, by the way. Same that kind of acknowledgement we got when they invited our field marshal, now promoted field marshal, and our prime minister. And he said, these are great guys. They're very strong army these guys have, the great air force. And then he would tease the airplanes, the number of airplanes that have gone down with India. Every day was 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. And I think he's really squeezed. And like you said, I was shocked myself as a Pakistani. The Indian capitulated fast. I was expecting more resilience because they've had time to build up their economy. Since the Obama days, they've been patronized, the IT sector. They've gotten thousands and thousands of visas to come to America and end up as tech CEOs. Surprise, surprise, because the tech industry is the private market and it's not the CIA and DARPA or whatever. It's the private sector, like the Heinz ketchup company. It's a real private corporation. So even then, we were expecting the Indians would have more push, giving us more time with the Americans, but I don't think we got it. And part of that cynical calculus now is that This is what the Americans want to hear about Gaza. What actually happens on ground remains to be seen. Whether Hamas or the fighting arms in Gaza, which have some semblance of a structure and a political hierarchy still existing there in the West Bank or in the diaspora, whether they capitulate, whether their negotiation with the Arabs, who are the principal negotiators in the Muslim world right now, Qatar and the Saudis and the like, uh, what actually happens. But in my sneaking suspicion, this sort of this song and dance is being done because diplomatically we have to run cover for Netanyahu, who's clearly faced a military defeat. That's the main thing that I get. He's been embarrassed on the battlefield by a ragtag militia armed with, Irani and locally made weapons, Russian, Chinese weapons, and they need a diplomatic win. So he's put forward Jared Kushner as the real estate guru. He's put forward Tony Blair because his son's big in tech and surveillance, and he wants to build smart cities or whatever. And he's bullying the Saudis and the Qataris and the like to capitulate, and then he's selling this vision of Gaza as a city of the future. What do you think is actually going to happen? Is Israel going to get the boot? Is Netanyahu going to get the boot, or is he going to get away with it? Is Trump going to run enough cover? Because when you run cover for Netanyahu, the first thing that has to go is international law. The first thing that has to go is the UN. And it just happens to be that the anti-war president seems to be the pro-Israel president.
He doesn't seem to be the pro-Israel.
He is.
Bought and paid for by Israel. He admits it. Miriam Adelson's $100 million. He said, she bought me. And he also said she works for Israel. No president has been this transparent in terms of his fidelity and fealty to Israel. Not just Israel as a nation, but the concept of Zionist Israel, greater Israel, of the worst. You imagine Israel as bad as Israel could be, and this is the Israel that Donald Trump promotes. As you said, the rule of law goes out the window. And Donald Trump, this is what the Peace Board is about. The Peace Board is about creating an alternative mechanism of global interaction to resolve these issues that's not hampered by the fact that the United Nations doesn't do the bidding of the United States. This Peace Board will, because, my God, you have to pay him $1 billion for the privilege of sitting on this Peace Board. I'm still curious where that money goes, because he's the chairman of the board, and he will retain the chairmanship of the board even after he's done with president. I think the $1 billion goes into an offshore account that's not managed by the Congress of the United States, which creates a whole host of constitutional issues, but nobody seems to care. But we could talk all this stuff. These are words on paper. These are diagrams. This is money in the bank. The only thing that matters is the blood in the veins of the Hamas fighter, the blood in the veins that pumps through the hearts of the Palestinian people. And as things stand, Hamas has not been defeated, and the Palestinian people still exist. And that's the only thing that counts here. How long can Hamas continue to resist? And I think the answer is until the last Hamas fighter is standing. And they've shown an ability to stand for some time now. I don't see much retreat in Hamas. The Palestinian people, it's a different thing, because who are the Palestinian people? What are the Palestinian people? Who speaks for the Palestinian people? It's a source of eternal frustration as somebody who turned to the Palestinian cause late in the game. I'm the first one to acknowledge that. But when I turned to it, I was hoping to find a more unified position. And what I found is a deeply fractured reality that you can't speak about a Palestinian state in a singularity, because there's different visions and versions and derivatives thereof. There are Palestinians who don't want a Palestinian state. There are Palestinians who are satisfied with a relationship with Israel. There are Palestinians who use the concept of a Palestinian state merely as a means of promoting their own political agendas, the political empowerment. Mazen, is that his name? The Abbas, the president of the Palestinian
Mahmoud Abbas. Yeah, Mahmoud
Yeah,
Abbas. Yeah,
but Abu Mazen, is that what they call him? Or
Abu Mazen. Yeah, that's his.
yeah,
There's a like a honorific
Nom de guerre.
nom de guerre. That's
But
what you. Yeah.
but I mean, he doesn't care about Palestine. He cares about himself. He cares about political power. He cares about money. But he doesn't care about power. That's why he's made common cause with Israeli security forces to suppress West Bank, you know, dissent, opposition. You know, the Palestinian people are their own worst enemies. I get in trouble when I say that. I get a lot of pushback, but it's the truth. And so now we have the people of Gaza who have become the personification of the Palestinian cause, but they're really not. I mean, they're betrayed all over the place by their own people, by the Arab world. And so it truly comes down to the resilience of the people of Gaza, of Hamas. And they've shown extraordinarily resilience, but we have to be careful about relying on human resilience, because the weakness there is the term human. There literally is only so much a human body can take and a human collective can take. And at some point in time, given no other recourse, the human system fails. So I can't sit here and say that Hamas can write out the Trump administration. I'd like to believe they could, because they've shown a remarkable ability to sustain this fight. I can't say that the people of Gaza, I mean, my God, what do they have left? Nothing. I mean, it's not just the genocide against the people, the destruction that's been done on how do you survive in a concrete jungle? I mean, the world, maybe the Western world, maybe Pakistan, maybe you guys are tuned in more, but the level of destruction that's been done to Gaza is mind-boggling. It's numbing. And many in the West just opt to tune it out, pretend it isn't happening. I mean, I live in New York. If I want to forget about the people of Gaza, all I have to do is stop looking at the pictures, because it doesn't impact me on a daily basis. I don't have any religious, links. They're not, I don't have common religion. I don't have common history, common values. It's simply the only thing I have in common with Gaza is basic humanity. Basically, it's what one human being feels for another human being. But when that overwhelms me, when my senses are just overloaded with the enormity of the tragedy that's been fallen, I can just tune out, and my life goes on, unhindered, unimpeded. And so the cause of Palestine is in danger by people who are overwhelmed with the reality of Gaza and the damage done. It's a long way of just saying that, I can't tell you how much more Hamas can do and how much more the people of Gaza can take. But that is the only thing that's going to drive the outcome. This peace board won't do anything. Jared Kushner's desires to build a casino in Gaza won't do anything. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is the ability of the people of Gaza and Hamas to continue their resistance.
That was beautifully put. But I have just two minor points. Number one, the Hamas authorities have put forward Marwan al-Barghouti, who is sort of a central figure, who is representing the more, the right and the left, if you'd characterize it as that, in the Palestinian vision or Palestinianism. And there's a reason why the Israelis keep him in jail and torture him and do not allow him access to the...
Well, that's what I was going to say. They put forward a man who's still in Israeli prison.
Right, sure. It is a bit of a...
That's not a serious nomination. I'm sorry.
Sure. All right, fair enough. We'll accept that. But maybe he is the unifying figure that...
he is. That's why Israel is going to keep him in prison.
Yeah, sure. The other thing is that this idea that there's no cultural religious responsibility in the West when it comes to Gaza. The third oldest church in Christian history is in Gaza, and it was bombed by the Israelis. This is shocking to me as
and the fact that I, as a Christian,
aren't aware of it.
I'm aware of that, but the fact that my neighbors who all go to church aren't aware of that
No.
means
It's a tragedy. It's a nothing.
It's a nothing.
It's a nothing, which is very unfortunate. But I just wanted to maybe, the people that come listen to you, this would be something that would be helpful for them.
Oh, no. Thank you for bringing it up. And maybe let's talk about it a little bit more. Let's talk about
the follow-up.
Christianity.
The actual question I have is not a religious one. And I know you have some fascinating ideas about religion, and you have criticisms of the way religion is the way religion is organized in America, and the way Christianity has structured itself in the political sphere, with the Christian Zionism, with the evangelical style sort of, it's crazy to me from the outside looking in. But the real question is, you keep saying Donald Trump. I get it. On a domestic level, he's this dictator character. It's undemocratic. It's un-American. On a global scale, and in a larger calculus, doesn't he represent a significant part of the American establishment? And even when he goes away, why are we operating under this assumption that this is not going to be the new normal? Like we went from the Monroe Doctrine to the Donnie's Doctrine, right? And this is not an original of mine, it's one of my friends. So the Donnie Doctrine is real. Like Greenland, Latin America, North America, you're my bitch. This is the new situation.
Yeah.
So what pencil pusher the CIA is going to be like? You know what? This Scott Ritter guy has it right. We have to go back to some sort of decency, whatever the amount of decency was. They're enjoying insane amounts of power. They have idiots like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to dance on TV for them, who are not real FBI people. These people are not running any institution. These are fall guys. Donald Trump is famous for fall guys. It's all he's done all his life is declare bankruptcies and put up fall guys. So as an outsider, I can see it. And I'll give you an insight, a cultural insight. Every time there's been a military coup in Pakistan, the dictator at that time makes fun of the Constitution. That's the first thing they do. They make fun of the Constitution. That's something that, is uniquely third world. It's very third world. And ICE coming up and shooting people, we were laughing at it. Not at the human tragedy, but like, we were like, is this America? It was shocking to us in the third world, in the so-called third world.
You're bringing up something that's very uncomfortable.
I'm very sorry.
And it's something that, again, let's be honest and frank here. It's amazing how when you leave the borders of the United States, everything becomes clear. That the American pretense of constitutionality, the rule of law, and it is, and apparently it was a pretense the entire time, because how quickly we're able to watch constitutional norms and values collapse and Americans adapt to that just reinforces what I said earlier, that if you don't know and live and breathe the Constitution, then you don't know what you're defending. And therefore, when it goes away, you don't recognize that you've lost it. But and I mean, you're being very polite, and I give you credit for that. But the disdain in your voice when you speak about America, especially when somebody like me tries to apply values and the sense of the rule of law. I mean, America's been a lawless hegemon doing whatever it wants ever since it had the mantle of global responsibility thrust upon it at the end of the Second World War. And so for you, when you take a look at what's happening in America today, it may not come as a surprise, because you say, well, that's the America we know and love, a lawless bandit out to rob anybody and everybody. And, and poor Scott Ritter is just now waking up to the fact that what he thought existed no longer exists. But that's the reality I am compelled to confront the fact that everything that I believed in not only no longer exists, but maybe never existed, that I had bought into a narrative that was designed to appease people like me, to make me believe that there was a system worth defending. Look, I always knew, and you go back to the Constitution, I keep going back to that document because, damn it, I read it and I believed in it, and I was willing, I continue to be willing to die for it. But, we, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union, we understood from the very beginning that we weren't perfect, that we had problems. This is why we have an amendment process to the Constitution. We had slavery. We knew slavery was a problem. We fought a civil war to end that slavery problem. We've been fighting battles to give women, the right to vote, to have civil rights for minorities. We continue to fight these battles. But it turns out we've always been prisoner to an economic elite that just game the system to their benefit. And what Donald Trump has done is actually one of the most honest things one could imagine on the part of the economic elite. He said, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm tired of playing the game where we pretend that we're something that we're not. We are a nation driven by greed. That's it. The only thing that counts in America is money and wealth. And sadly, it comes down to those who have the money. We are dependent upon, as Donald Trump has honestly said, his own sense of morality. I mean, he is literally the equivalent of the robber barons of the late 19th century, the Rockefellers and such, who built the railroads, who built things. They did it out of a sense of philanthropy, but not just philanthropy, but that's what made them even richer. I mean, they did things, they built things, not because they were trying to help the people, but by helping the people build these things, they made themselves even more relevant and richer. And that's Donald Trump. He is the most honest man who's ever sat in the office of the presidency in modern history, because he is honestly saying that which has always been the case.
Amen, brother.
The rule of law doesn't matter. The rule of law is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is might, is power, is strength. And so let's stop playing games. I'm not going to pretend that he's being straight up. I mean, I don't mean to be too crude here, but, he's not asking to marry me.
No.
He's saying you're my mistress. And I can do anything I want to you, anytime I want to you, because I paid for you. That's the reality. That's the relationship you have.
I want to clarify.
If you buy into that.
I grew up with cowboys and Indians, Louis L'Amour novels. I love America, culturally speaking. It's a fascinating,
Which Louis L'Amour novels are your favorite? You a fan of the Sacketts?
Yeah, I guess that would be the best. Yeah.
Yeah, that's serious. But I grew up on Louis L'Amour
novels. Of course, we got a culture lag in Pakistan. So I grew up in the 90s, but still, culture in the 70s and 80s would be coming to us. And we don't have the culture lag anymore. Now we have the internet. But, I grew up with that stuff, and I do understand America. And like you said, you are an elder, and I don't want to, be rude to you, and I'm trying my best not to.
I'm not your elder. I'm your. No, we're having a frank conversation. So please,
you are, man. I grew up watching you on TV, man. What are you talking about? So this idea that there's something lofty about the idea of an America. Don't get me wrong. We respect that, even in the outside world. It's big. You dreamed big. You sold it to the world. That's what civilizations are. That's what empires are. And you if it walks like it, if it talks like it, it's a duck. You know what I mean? It was the pole. It was the Rome. It was the new Rome. You can become a citizen. You can get naturalized. Here's the Constitution. This is what we believe in. This is the Republic, and so on. But this notion that which is unique to American culture, which I've observed from the outside, like you mentioned at the start of the interview, that if we took the naturalization test, maybe most Americans would fail, is that American people weren't self-aware enough. They were mollycoddled or kept in a bubble to the point where they didn't doubt there's like zero self-doubt in Americanism. There is cynicism, don't get me wrong, but there's no self-doubt to the point of it becoming actual qualified critique. And my assessment of the American people right now, of your young people and the Gen Z, especially like the Generation Z, which is I think 25 below, is your people are sexed out. That's how I describe them. Like they're sexed out, as in
sexed out.
Yeah, they're fully consumed with desires. They don't have any rigor or discipline.
Yeah. They're the Roman mob.
Yeah, they're the Roman mob, and there's an orgy of events happening, just extravagance, and everything is over the top, and it's not even in how the Americans would critique themselves in the 80s or 90s. We're too decadent. This is too decadent. I'm saying right now, these kids are on the internet, they're on pornography, they're listening to music live. Everything they're getting is in a digital space. Is
No,
so
I just I'll make an observation on
if you
that.
killed a Pakistani, if I said killed a Pakistani, like think about it like this, like if an equivalent government agency shot and killed a Pakistani, something would happen on the
no,
media,
you're right. Yeah.
in the public sphere, in civil society. I was shocked that nothing happened in America, and we kill people all the time. Don't get me wrong. I don't want in the comments. Don't at me like Pakistan killed so and so person and so did.
What you said about oversex. Let me put it in a perspective, because you're right. Look, sex has always existed there. That's why you exist. That's why I exist. That's why our parents exist. That's how mankind goes
Thanks,
on.
Dad.
Sex exists for, that's right, the birds and the bees, baby. We're going to have that conversation. It's always been there. But society has always found ways to control the excesses of eroticism and things of that nature, because otherwise it would just become a Roman orgy. It's out of control. So, in the old days, if you wanted to get laid, you had to take her out to dinner. You had to open the door you had to treat her like a lady, and maybe you had to put a ring on her finger. But you had to go through not the pretense, but you had to go through societal,
the rituals, the motions of courtship,
rituals of civilization. And what's happened today is those rituals have been eliminated, and we go straight from A to Z. We don't go through anything leading up to that, and it cheapens everything, and it means that nothing is of value. That's the bottom line. Not to get, but sex, a relationship with a woman is supposed to be more than sexual. It's supposed to be about love, yearning. You work together towards common goals and objectives. The sex leads to children. It leads to a family. It leads to, the building block of society. And when you eliminate all that and you go straight to the event without paying any of the price or making any of the investments, you have a society that stands for nothing, a society that is nothing. And sadly, I think you see in the United States and in Europe, in the West, societies that have become detached from their foundation. And this is why, I'm not Muslim. And I don't think I ever could be, because we've talked about it before. I don't believe in organized religion, but I have a very good friend here who's an imam. He's actually an imam in Texas, Dallas, Texas, but he comes periodically to Albany, and I just spoke at their mosque last week, in fact, and I was. I was a little taken aback when I came in, because they do practice, the women are in their zone and the men are in their zone. And I'm like, it's America. But I'm going to shut up. It's not my business. But then I saw the respect in which they treated the women, and the respect the women treated the men. And I went, there's something here. I'm not talking again, I don't believe in diminishment, but respect. The respect that the genders had towards one another is lacking in American society today. Women get mad if you open the door for them. Literally, it's not. I could go to a restaurant and I open the door. Very rarely will they say thank you. It's almost resentful. Like, why are you opening the door? Am I, what do you? Can I not open the door? I'm opening the door for. I'm sorry, I'm not. Pulling a chair out, taking a coat off, all the things, all the rituals of gender relationship that isn't about supremacy and subordination. It's about roles. It's about, creating structure. Those are gone in society today, and I don't know if we can reteach it.
No, here's the thing. Like, you just described a dialectical, basically. Like the sexes are in a dialectical sort of engagement as proposition and opposition, as two opposing forces. What you did not describe is a family unit, essentially, where you have a balance of roles. It's not about subordination or subjugation. It's about this sort of cohesive, complementary, supplementary relationship, and then you build a family and a family unit. And like, for example, in Pakistan, when I see America and I think about the militias and that culture of guns, I think that's the most awesome thing that I can imagine. But it didn't end up being the thing it's supposed to be. Like the thing it
No,
was supposed
it
to
never
be,
does.
yeah, it's like silly guys in the forest, shooting in the air or whatever, drinking Mountain Dew, as opposed to the idea of free people who protect their families, their property. Some Americanisms are universal, man. Like they're beloved, religious, irreligious, whatever. And the family would have been the central, it should have been as American as apple pie. But what it seems like, if you look at a Woodstock, for example, if you look at stuff like the cultural interventions your deep state did in the 50s and 60s, they seem to have manufactured the modern American. They seem to have the American state seems to be hell bent on breaking up the family, whether that be the black families by incentivizing or disincentivizing single parenthood, take your pick, whether it be not doing clampdowns on Hollywood or censorships, because again there was a free speech debate. It became a free speech contention. So to me, as an outsider, it seems that the American state created the perfect subject to be ruled over, to be lorded over. They created the homo economicus. Like I used to study that in economics. They created the consumer. And that's being replicated all over the world, by the way, where we're all like, we're all trying to wear blue jeans and have apple pie or whatever. And that comes with all of these consequences. So at the same time, as somebody who's patriotic, on some level, you must feel proud that America is gonna wave its fists at the world and it's gonna be 2.0, its second wind in its empire. On some level, surely you must feel some pride.
No, I mean, actually, I don't. I don't believe in power, irresponsibly wielded. That's like saying as a parent, I'm proud of the fact that I can beat my children. Who would be proud of beating their children? As a parent, I am proud of having discipline. I'm proud of raising my children to respect the rules, to be intelligent, and if you have to wield discipline to move them in that path, yes. But the pride isn't the completed project. The pride is how you got to the completed project. It's like building anything of value. You look back and you look at the finished product, and you don't just admire it for what it is. You know what went into it. You know how you built the most solid foundation. You made no shortcuts on the foundation. So when you look at that building, you say that building's here forever. You know that every joist was done properly, that there's not going to be, you look at that and you say, I have built something of substance from bottom to top. But what's happening today is we want to go straight to an empty edifice and say, we've built something. No, America wielding power for the sake of wielding power is an embarrassment, because that's not what America is supposed to be. Yes, power comes, the source of American power in the past, and again, you as an outsider may disagree, but we earned the right to wield. I'm sorry, your world. The Soviet Union did defeat Nazi Germany, but they paid a horrible price for that. But the United States, we projected power globally in a way that no other nation could do. And it was our economy that drove the world's resurrection we earned the right to wield power. Now, we wielded power irresponsibly. I'm not going to defend Vietnam. I'm not going to defend Korea. I'm not going to defend many things. But no one can say that we didn't earn the right to be there. The fact that we fumbled it is a totally different thing. But what Donald Trump is doing is trying to reap the benefits without acknowledging how we got there. And you can't divorce yourself from that. I would be proud. I would always want my country to try to learn to live responsibly with the world in accordance with the rules we claim. It's like, there's no worse parent than the parent that tells the children there's rules and then the parent disobeys all the rules. I mean, the hypocrisy alone is amazing. It's badly, but I've always believed that America is its own worst enemy because we want to be something, and then right when the moment comes where we could be that, we take a shortcut. We cheat on, it's like building a building. You build everything right, but you get to the roof and you use cheaper tiles or something like that, and you cheapen the whole product. The way we interact with the world in terms of international law, there's nothing wrong with a rules-based international order, so long as the rules-based international order is, applied in accordance with the rules of law. But that's not what we do. We do it for our own benefit. But Donald Trump's he's cut the strings. He's cut the umbilical. We're no longer linked to this foundation. So therefore, I feel that he's living off of what other people built for him. He didn't build the strongest military in the world. I did. Okay, my sacrifice. When Pete Hegseth got up before 800 military officers in Quantico last year, and he said the ideal American warrior is the captain of 1991. That was me. I was the captain of 1991. Why? Because I was trained in the Cold War, the 80s, when we stood for something. We had real training values. We were professionals, and we were really, really good at what we did. And then the military cheapened it through a whole variety of ways so that the military today isn't that. America once stood for something. And maybe it was an ideal that couldn't be met, but at least we stood for something. Donald Trump doesn't stand for anything except Donald Trump. And I can never support a dictator. I'm an American. Okay? Maybe I lie to myself. Maybe I have to tell lies to myself about what the president is and all that. I don't care. I will lie to myself all day long to believe that a president of the United States is linked to the people through the Constitution and linked to the world through the United Nations Charter. And that whatever we do, even if it's imperfect and wrong, we still have that linkage so that it can be corrected. Because there's a mechanism of correction when you speak of the rule of law. Donald Trump has delinked himself from any mechanism of correction except his own personal morality. That's problematic. So no, I am not one of these people that go, America, hell yeah, just keep it up, boss. No, because that's not America. That's the cult of personality. And if you're an American citizen and you bought into the cult of personality, George Washington had the chance to be king. And he walked away from it because he believed in the primacy of democracy. And that's why I can never support what Donald Trump is doing today.
That's well said. People like you, for whatever you struggle, let's say, we're not going to comment on the morality of the Gulf War, but the competence we accept. Obviously, the world has to acknowledge that the Americans earned the right to sit at the table, to be the table, essentially. And we're having some technical difficulties on our side, so don't mind any background noise. We're fiddling with stuff over there because we're not Americans. Things break down usually. We have ad hoc systems and the like. Oh, it's up again. All right. That was a beautiful speech, by the way. I was going to stand up for a second. That was the most American thing I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, even if it's a lie, you have common mythologies like, George Washington, he cannot tell a lie and he cut down the cherry tree. You have to believe in something. My problem with America, or my understanding of why America failed, or why it is failing, or why it's not being what it ought to be, is because it had no metaphysical grounding. Manifest destiny was not rooted in any religious or sort of, transcendental belief. It was a secular notion born out of the Enlightenment, which had notions of racial supremacy built into it. The Italians. Are you Italian? Are you Irish? Are you what descent are you?
German and Scotch Irish.
Right, German and Scotch. Wow. So, well, you half of you wasn't like white until whenever, right? So that I'm very unfortunate, but
I point that out to people. I say that half of my family were indentured servants when they came over to the United States. In fact, they actually had to run away and flee to the frontier in the 1700s, and And it was only through the revolution when they were able to emerge from the frontier that they
You
could
mentioned this sort
reintegrate
of
into
north-south
society.
dichotomy, but my understanding as an outsider is the east-west dichotomy, which is the ethnic makeup, sort of the German, Irish Catholic and Italians. And then you have the Protestant, Western, the WASPs. Then you have the Jewish quarter. That's America to me in an outsider's perspective. And I think America tried something, the constitutionalism. That was the sort of the metaphysical grounding or the transcendental grounding that united all of these, common causes. And effectively, I appreciate this as an outsider, even though people in the BLM or people like social activists might disagree. I think America pretty much dealt with racism very decently as a real problem on a systemic institutional level. Not imperfectly, obviously, but very impressively, like any modern nation has, like, better than any, honestly. But with all those flaws, their foreign policy's never been like we've never, like you've mentioned again and again. You're very apologetic about it. You don't have to be. You've atoned, I guess. You've worked hard in the other direction now for most of your years. But American foreign policy has always been something of a subjugating empire. And that's not uncharacteristic of any empire. It's just that what they did with it was unimpressive compared to maybe a British colonist. Even British colonials I mean, not compared to the French, they were horrible, by the way, North Africa. But if you compare it to like British colonialism in India, there's a sense of respect even that we have in the subcontinent. We don't hate them entirely. We have our gripes with them, but we also have some respect for modernization or introduction of industry. Compare that with the Soviet Union in Central Asia. They were monsters, the hell on wheels. They uprooted the culture, changed the language, did whatever. But they did modernize and industrialize. They did some good things. And with America, maybe it's been too short. Maybe it's been the formalized interest system that you have, where you have the lobbying as a legalized mechanism in your democracy. I don't know what it is, but it's been too short-lived, and it's mostly been USAID stuff. It's been Voice of America stuff. Tucker Carlson can say that he doesn't know that his dad was CIA, but I know that his dad's CIA. I knew that when I was a kid, when Voice of America would be here covering fifth column, ethnic whatever, or celebrating the sixth gender whatever, or affirming the rights of some obscure indigenous women's group in Pakistan or wherever. So that's been America for me in my imagination, and it's been a bullying thing. It's been a bullying source, and now I see it sort of not buckling, but sort of wrapping up its involvement in our regions, and returning to an ad hocism where they sort of allow us to manage our things from afar. Obviously, it'll still be the hegemon, but it'll sort of let us be in our place.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out because again, we're subordinating ourselves to the whim of a single man. But as you said earlier, and we never really followed through on it. I thought it was a very important point. What's going to happen when Donald Trump is no longer president? What will America be? And America, I think, you hinted at it, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think America goes back to constitutional norms and values. I think America is going to be defined by the next emperor, the next dictator. We have become Rome, and we're going to transition from one emperor to the next emperor to the next emperor. And American society is adapting to that. We are a society defined by greed and such. And I don't know if you can hear me because you've frozen. So I don't know if I'm speaking into the abyss.
Hello, Scott. Sorry for the delay.
No problem.
And just another brutal reminder of why you're American, we're Pakistan. Sorry about that.
We're number one. We're number one.
Without a doubt, my friend, without a doubt. There was a very important angle to the discussion, which was that you were presenting it, and not like in an unfair way, I think in more of a domestic understanding of what America ought to have been and what it is becoming. But from an outside perspective, we see America or Donald Trump not as a departure or a rupture in American policy, we just simply see it as the natural evolution of where the empire was going. So what happens after Trump? The assumption would be, oh, we'll go back and we have Mamdani in New York and there's going to be a resurgence of the left. And I don't see it happening.
No, no, all institutions are being destroyed right now, and you can't rebuild these institutions. When you have Congress literally punting, Congress leads by precedent. You behave. Your only role in Congress is to, breathe life into the Constitution. You're a lawmaker. And so when Congress says, no, we're going to go ahead and punt to the executive, they're saying that they're just simply becoming a rubber stamp, facilitator of the will of the executive. And the judiciary is there to provide constitutional checks against abuses of power. And when the when the Supreme Court came out in Donald Trump's first term and said, when you're president, you can break any law you want to and not be held accountable, in effect, because you're president. That means the rule of law doesn't apply. And so, again, hats off to Donald Trump, I guess, for being the most honest man to ever hold the office of presidency. And he said, this is all artifice. This is all artificial. This is an impediment to effective government. That if you're going to rely upon a supreme executive, then make the executive supreme. And that's what he's doing right now. And I don't see us going back. The problem is once you give somebody power, they never relinquish it. It's rare to have somebody go, well, thank you for making me dictator, but now I'm going to hand the power back over to the people. The Turks did that for a while. I was always in awe of the Turkish military, who actually believed in Ataturk's, insistence that they defend the Constitution. When they saw Turkey shifting in a way that was not in accordance with Ataturk's secularism, they stepped in. And hats off to the Turkish generals, because they always handed it back to the Turks, the Turkish people, who then screwed it up and the generals had to intervene again, et cetera, et cetera. But that's rare. But again, they believe in the Constitution. Trump doesn't believe. It's not as though Trump said, America's deviated from the Constitution, so I'm assuming total power to fix America, to reassert constitutional values, and to turn it back over to America. Trump's saying the Constitution doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And so he set the standard that the executive now is the supreme power in the United States of America. This means that whoever replaces him will not only retain the power that Trump has seized, but always seek to get more power and more power, which is going to be easier to do as the institutions of government become more and more meaningless. Because if you're not attached to the rule of law, what is your framework? I mean, why do you exist? Congress will just become basically a sinecure of corruption, where the president gets to pick somebody and they get to have a congressional seat where they get to make $30 million, and it's a reward for your subservience. And it becomes just an institution of even more corruption than it is. The judiciary will exist solely to rubber stamp the will of the president, and you will, again, it's a sinecure. You're going to be taken and put into this position. You're going to be given money and privilege, and you're going to be told you rubber stamp what the president wants. That's the future of America, I believe. I think that once we've transferred power to a supreme executive, the office of the supreme executive, because remember, there is a deep state in America. The deep state was always held in check by the Constitution. But when you've done away with the Constitution, the deep state's simply going to say that the supreme executive now is our vehicle of empowerment, and we will invest ourselves totally into the continuation of the supreme executive. And that's the America of the future. For you, it's the same, because the way America interfaces with the world is through a supreme executive.
Might not get a visa, though, now.
Pardon?
Might not get a visa, though, now. So it is a bit different.
And that's just temporary. I think, again, if you pay daddy $1 billion, you'll get a visa.
I don't think we have that kind of money. Also, I've always wanted to go east or west in America. It's a very fascinating landscape. But here's the thing. Like you said, the sort of universal backsliding on democratic values, on constitutionalism, or any secular or liberal order world vision, it's happening globally. But in all of this, not to miss the forest for the trees. It's the thing that sticks out like a sore thumb. Like one of your colleagues, not your colleague technically, but one of your fellow countrymen. I remember Dr. Michael Scheuer, CIA guy, fascinating character. I grew up on him as well, reading his. I remember his book. He was America's March to Hell, to American Tyranny, or something like that. Something very operatic and big like that. He uh, he said that he described Israel as a cancer on American foreign policy, and that we should dump it. I was very shocked by that. Oh, this is an American. Um, and again, I do understand how the office or the of the deep state manages and controls the wider narrative. They have guys on this side and they have guys on that side as well. As I got older, I understood that this is how they manage the Overton window. But even then, that amount of lip service shows to me that in the American deep state, there is a recognition of how Israel is a cancer on American foreign policy. What sticks out like a sore thumb for America in all of this backsliding is clearly Israel. And the thing that we started the conversation on today was the peace plan. Nothing's going to come out of it. This much is clear. Like it's going to be, it's like a bullying tactic or whatever. But what's Israel gonna do? We talked about Hamas, we talked about Gaza, we talked about the Palestinian people and how desperate the cause is, how scattered it is. The Arabs have had a role in betraying them. The Muslim world is subordinated to America. We didn't talk about Iran yet, but you can deal with it as you wish. Um, the axis is pretty much decimated right now. It's in self defense mode in different parts of the in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq, and so on. In Syria, it has to had to retreat, obviously, because there's a new Syrian government. Um, but in all of this, what I see is because Donald Trump is, or the new American order is to patronize regional powers and to rule in an ad hoc way from the new Donro borders, which are Greenland and Latin America and North America. Isn't Israel going to be the main guy? Isn't that it, like this your health minister RFK Jr. described it as a gunship, which I thought was hilarious. Sorry, he described it as a gunship, but he said that it's our gunship in the Middle East and it's our launching pad off of. So is Israel the big bad? Is that the new American foreign policy to build it up as the big bad in the region and allow it to go willy nilly into Libya and Syria and Lebanon and wherever it wants?
I mean, that's possible, but understand that if I were Israeli, I'd be a little nervous right about now. Because if I'm an APAC person, I just spent decades building a mechanism of control that's contingent upon the Congress of the United States. A reflection of the reality that the Constitution gives Congress control of the purse, the money. And so I've built a system that, how do you influence Congress? You influence it through the media, so control of the media. And again, you're dealing with a rules-based order in America that the Zionists mastered. They mastered the rules of the game. They became the puppet masters. And what Donald Trump has done is said, I alone am the puppet master. All the mechanisms of control and influence that Israel once wielded are no longer effective because Congress no longer matters. Why spend $100 million to buy a Congress when Congress doesn't matter? The only thing that matters is the executive, and the only thing he cares about is money, and is the Israeli machine, which was geared towards leveraging some money into total power, capable of bringing enough money to the table to buy the president of the United States. And I would say in the long term, the answer is no. Because now we're moving away from, when you have a constitution, when you have the rule of law, you imply that there's right and wrong. And so the Israelis were masters at manipulating the concept of injustice done to the Jews during the Second World War and building upon this injustice to continue this notion of injustice. And you see that with October 7th, what they've done there to create the notion of the injustice to the Jew, therefore justifies greater Israel and Zionism. And that was all predicated upon a sense of morality attached to the rule of law. But when you eliminate the Constitution, when you eliminate the rule of law, and the world now is defined by the singularity of the morality of an individual, Who's in control? The individual. And at some point in time, Israel will become inconvenient to the American supreme leader. And does Israel have what it takes to buy a man, buy a position? And I don't think they do, because I think the United States, once we detach ourselves from the rule of law, we detach ourselves from traditional concepts of right versus wrong, good versus evil. And we become subordinated to the whim of an individual who only cares about his own personal greed. And so,
but like again with the individual versus the institutions, what I see as an outsider is that Israel, and by extension Zionism, has deep infiltration into American society on the layer of the judiciary, in the Congress, in media, in Hasbara, in the tech world, in Silicon Valley. I see it in the film industry. I see it in the intelligences. I know about the United Fruit scandals. I know about the kind of cooperation that the Israelis have been up to. I know how those bombs got to Dimona. You know what I mean? As an outsider, I know this. So, is the American deep state very cognizant? Is that something that bothers them, or is that something that they've reconciled themselves with? That we're attached at the hip, me and this guy.
When I was in the intelligence community, there was a significant. First of all, in foreign policy, we used to have the Arabists, because oil. Never forget the power of oil, because oil is what? Money. And the Arabists, linked to the power of oil, used to have the upper hand over the Zionists, who are linked to morality. Because at the end of the day, Jewish money is not infinite. It's just a matter of investing where it needs to be invested. And again, if you're investing in Congress, you're investing in the rule of law. You're investing in the ability to buy enough members of Congress to ensure that Congress does what's needed to sustain the Zionist vision. But when Congress no longer matters because the Constitution no longer matters, that money is wasted money. Big oil will always have more money than Zionism. Big oil will always have more money than Zionism. And without Congress to check big oil, I think the power and influence of big oil will trump Zionism in the long term. We don't believe in Zionism. We've allowed the Israelis to hijack us, but Christian Zionism wasn't a thing. It didn't drive us in the Second World War. We didn't go to war to defend Christian Zionism. It's a new phenomenon, and it's a new phenomenon that has been magnified, accelerated, given credence because of the ability of elites to leverage limited power into absolute power by taking control of a mechanism of power, the Congress of the United States. But Congress has just basically made itself useless. And so now we come to the president. And the big pharma will always have more money than Zionism. That's just a statement of fact. Big oil will always have more money than. So who is the president now that he has defined greed as his sole defining purpose? Again, I just ask you to re-listen to Davos' speech made about Switzerland, where the entire U.S.-Swiss dynamic came down to $41 billion in economic deficits and how the president deals with that. That's it. That's all that matters is the bottom line. And Zionism will never have enough money to alter that bottom line calculation. So that's why I believe that
what
this
about
is not
the
going to be good
compromise?
for
What
Israel.
about the spy networks? What about the Epstein and the honey trapping and the money laundering and the complicated networks that ended up in what we call the crypto market at the end
Well,
of the day?
how much value does a sex tape have?
Well, not much when it comes to Donny Boy. Not much, it
Okay,
seems.
so there you just answered your own question.
Yeah.
When again, now not to get superficial here, but a sex tape used to be something. It was designed to embarrass.
End of a career. End of career.
End of everything, not because you had sex. We all have sex, and my God, if they filmed us having sex, it would be the most embarrassing thing in the world for everybody to see, including yourself. So thank God. But the whole idea of a sex tape was to create a scandal. But you just said that Gen Z doesn't care. Fact is, a sex tape may become the thing you need to have to promote yourself in society because of the over-sexualization of society. It's no longer the kiss of death. And so I just think, again, Zionism used mechanisms of influence and control that were premised on a way of life that no longer exists, a sense of morality that no longer exists, and a sense of legal structure that no longer exists. When you remove the Constitution, you remove the control that Congress has, and Zionism existed to control Congress, to influence everything else. The media was designed to influence Congress and the masses, but now you only have to influence one person. This dictator can shut down any media establishment he wants to. So when Super Jew at American Media Institute X, Y, and Z says, "Donnie, baby, I want you," he goes, "You lost your license." And what's Super Jew going to do? Nothing. Be unemployed.
Barry Weiss is on notice. MSNBC and Barry Weiss are on notice, man. You're scaring them.
Barry Weiss could be crushed like a bug.
Yeah.
Every one of them can be crushed by a bug. They only exist because they serve him. The moment they stop serving him, they will cease to exist. That's the reality. Because when you have a man whose only morality is the bottom line, there is no morality. He has no moral obligation to anything. And Israel just becomes a place on the map. We will always have an Israel. But the moment Benjamin Netanyahu was able to come to Congress, wrap himself in the American flag, and get standing ovations from a Congress when Congress mattered. If you come to Congress today, who cares? President doesn't care.
Are you telling me Donald Trump and the American deep state are playing some kind of 4D chess?
I'm not saying 4D. First of all, 4D chess implies a level of intellectual expansionism. This is the most crude game in the world. There's nothing 4D chess about. This is in your face. I'm punching you. There's no 4D chess here. It's 1D chess. Mess with me, I crush you. That's the American way now. It's as simple as it gets. Get in my way, I will destroy you. There's no 4D chess playing. It is as crude and rude as it gets. Mess with me, you die. That's it. That's it. And the world's buying into it. And they're just empowering this madman. And it's just going to feed into him and feed into him and feed into him. But again, they're feeding an individual. They're not feeding a system.
With that accelerationism, what do you think it is that in the cold,
say again?
That accelerationism, it's a kind of accelerationism. Obviously, there was a collapsing world order, and people sort of pushed it into that direction. Is there, on a cynical calculus, do you think regional powers in whatever regions that they may lie, ethnic groups, cultural values, or whatever unites them, is there an assumption in the different parts of the world that we can carve out our own rump, like a tiny vassal empires, our little Phoenician, under the banner of Rome? Is that what's going on? And
well, again,
doesn't Israel fare well? Haven't they?
Now you're asking me to believe that these minor actors in the world are playing 4D chess. Look, I'm going to cut it down to as simple as possible. There was the rule of law. It no longer exists. What exists instead is might makes right. Chaos, anarchy, people who can exploit the chaos and anarchy most effective will govern. It may turn out that fiefdoms are done, but it's going to be done by people who are best able not to play 4D chess, but just to come in and kick the ass if everybody is in their way, within the limits of their reach. We are creating the potential for global conflict as people seize what they can seize and hold on to it. But I don't think it's going to be as noble as, people saying, "Oh, we've been waiting centuries for the opportunity for our people to thrive." No, it's going to be a mafia thug saying, "I can exercise power more effectively than anybody else. I'm going to seize this power."
It's Prigozhin trying to come at Moscow. It's fiefdoms and warlords, but hasn't it always been that way? When a pole empire sort of goes away, fades into a more regional position like America is doing, that this is my hemisphere and everybody else is over there.
Well, yes. But again, you just said something. When an empire goes away. See, again, you're coming at it from the perspective of an outsider who looked at America and never bought into the pretense. Yes, you read Louis L'Amour, and yes, we all loved, Tyrell Sackett, going down with Tell in the background there, backing them up, and they're taking on, the Donnery brothers, and they're going to have the shootout, and it's going to be awesome, and they're going to win, and it's just this. My God, this is what I grew up on. It was great. I believed in it.
It was.
Okay. And then I transformed that vision into everything I looked at. I believed every time I saw an American officer or an American politician, I just envisioned Tyrell Sackett walking down Main Street with his arms at his side, the defender of justice going off. That's how I believed it. You read the books, but when you looked at America, all you saw was a bully. Behaving as a bully behaves. You didn't see something noble, or maybe you did, but maybe you quickly learned to view it the other way. So you've always, I believed, viewed America as an empire, and empires collapse. I never viewed America as an empire. I viewed America as a unique way of life, as a symbol of what humanity could be, as a nation that believed in a principle that had meaning, that had purpose, that had value. This is what I was willing to die for, was this America, not the imperfect reality. I've always said America's been imperfect. What I was going to die for, what I'm still willing to die for, is the potential of America to be good, the potential of America to be something, to stand for something, to aspire to something. That's what the Constitution gave us. That's what the rule of law gave us. And we blew it. And now it's gone. And so now we have become that which you have described us as, an empire built upon the greed and avarice of one man, this hegemon, this dictator, this modern day Caligula, lording over a modern day Rome that's populated by a mob who only cares about the next orgy and the next excessiveness. And they don't care about building the basic foundations of society, the family unit that becomes the town, that becomes the county, that becomes the state, that becomes the union. Family values do matter. And family values are premised on rules set forth by the parents. And when you get enough families together who agree on rules, you have a community. And when you get enough communities to come together to agree on rules, you have a nation. And the United States agreed on the rules called the Constitution of the United States of America, and we had a nation worth defending. And when we walk away from the Constitution, we cease becoming that which we aspire to, and we become nothing more than an empire which, frankly speaking, deserves to crumble. Sorry.
No, I mean, no, I get it. It's perfectly fine. It's the best parts of talking to somebody like you is somebody who's in the thick of it. You're not just some academic, sitting in some university somewhere talking about what America was or ought to be or has been. You were there. In the 90s, in the 80s. You were on the ground.
I read Louis L'Amour, baby.
Yeah, you read Louis L'Amour, and then you showed up with a big iron on your hip in Iraq, and then you tried to.
I was the cowboy.
So, this thing I tell you,
Tyrell Sackett walking down the streets of Baghdad there to clean out the bad guys, baby.
This thing that I used to tell you, I tell you every time before we start the recording, is that the first time I saw you was on a documentary by Journeyman Pictures, and you were a Marine at that time. Obviously, you were already in the weapons inspection, but you still have that sort of, it was the cut of your jib or something. And I said to my friend, I remember to this day, I think I was like 13 or 14, I said, that's the American way we have to fight. But it's people like you, the way you've matured, you say that there's another way. We don't just have to meet out in Peshawar or in Kabul or Kandahar or in Baghdad or in Fallujah as opponents on a very desperate battlefield where we're outgunned and outmanned by American machines or whatever. But there's a vision for the world that you have where you and I could have, we could talk about Louis L'Amour and not about Israel and this massive cancer that you guys have spread in the Middle East and ruined our lives practically. Or the fact that you were here in Afghanistan for 20 odd years and many of my friends and people that I knew and loved died or disappeared or were bombed in the north or that we had, or my school, for example, the way I grew up, like it was constantly like we had suicide attacks outside my school. And I grew up in that environment. Or the fact that one of the biggest highlights in my childhood was a CIA contractor from Blackwater who killed 3 citizens in my city, and he had a shootout. Raymond Davis, very famous case. That was like the peak of my teenage.
Oh, he was the guy that thought he was being tracked, and he
Yeah, he shot
yeah.
he shot passerby. He's a very paranoid guy. And it showed when he went back to America. He also had a fight in the parking lot of some Walmart or something. He was obviously, like, you have a guy. Contractor types are nuts. Obviously, like, you're operating in these places, no international law, no rules of engagement. You're actual cowboys in places where you don't speak the
No,
language. And
actual cowboys are Tyrell Sackett who have a sense of
sorry,
morality.
I mean in the negative connotation of
Yeah,
so and
the
so is the
worst kind of
cowboy.
cowboys.
The
That's
worst
right.
kind of cowboy.
The worst.
The outlaw.
Yeah, Black Bart.
Yeah. Black Bart. I have not heard the word Black Bart in like a million. That's beautiful. But this the question boils down to for us in the subcontinent, in Pakistan, and for our Muslim brethren in the Middle East and North Africa, is the question of Israel and India. Because that's where you're banking. The Americans are going to be banking on. Because if it is a question of money and weapons and containing what needs to be contained, then the question becomes China and the Middle East. So does Israel have the independent, because for me, when we say America is going to back off of our region, we don't mean completely. We mean intel and air support remains with the Israelis and the Indians potentially for the future. Israelis definitely, but for the Indians, at least on the intel level or geospatial intelligence and the like, which has been done before against Pakistan and vice versa for Pakistan as well. What does that mean for the Middle East? What does that mean for Israel? Is America going to back off?
It might be wishful thinking on my part, but I truly believe that Israel will not thrive in the years to come. I think that, again, the Zionist experiment was contingent upon American Zionists exercising control over an American system. But it was a system, again, that was created on an architecture of the rule of law, the constitutional rule of law. They mastered control of Congress. Those skill sets no longer apply because Congress no longer is the institution that it used to be. And I see Israel unable in the long term to compete against real moneyed interests. And I don't see this ending well for Israel. That's just me.
What does that mean in my neighborhood? You guys have created a mess in Balochistan. Israelis are poking their fingers in Balochistan. That border is Iran. They are an ancient people. We have cultural, historical ties with them. I have personal ties with people from Iran. They're a beautiful people. Things are messed up over there. You guys have economically crushed them like a bug, like you always say. You've given air support to the Israelis.
But we haven't been able to.
No. Of course. Their resilience is notwithstanding. But what I see from a cynical calculus as a Pakistani is an Iraq level Afghanistan, bigger than Iraq level crisis on my border, and with the people who have a shared love and affection with, and a cultural religious tie with. What's going to become of Iran if America is backing off? If Trump has played this big balancing act, like we saw at the Fordow plant, where he said, one and done, Israelis move those jets back. Don't move in. I command you not to move in. Whatever that circus was, which I've never been able to decipher what that was. But what does that mean for Iran? What does that mean for us? Are you not going to try to topple them? Are you not going to?
Well, no. The goal and objective of the United States is to remove the theocracy. But remember, we're not doing it for Israel. Okay, we're doing it because in 1980, April 1980. 8 American bodies were left in Desert One, and Iranian mullahs came and poked at them with a knife and a stick and desecrated those bodies. It was the personification of the humiliation of America, and we will never forgive Iran for that, ever. The theocracy will never, ever recover from that. Now, I know they'll say, oh, that's not what we intended. It doesn't matter. Perceptions create your own reality. And I'm telling you right now, in America, there is a level of hatred and disgust towards the theocracy that will always pit us against the theocracy. That's just the way it is. And you're going to have to let those generations die out. Maybe the Iranian regime is resilient enough to outlast it. But we still have enough people my age who look, I had to struggle. I traveled to Iran. I've been to Iran. It was tough for me. My best friends were on that rescue mission. And I am colored by their belief system. So I went to Iran during Ahmadinejad's presidency, by the way, which was, and the Iranians won me over. Okay, by going to Iran, I was quickly able to cut through the propaganda and get down to the brass tacks, to the reality. And so I'm somebody who believes that we can peacefully exist with the Islamic Republic of Iran and that there's no fundamental issues with that. But the American people aren't. But it's not Israel that's driving that. Israel's exploiting that. And that's what people need to understand. Donald Trump didn't deliver the knockout blow this most recent time. He pulled back. Why? Because the price he would pay was too high. Israel now is trying to convince Donald Trump, according to some reports, that it can absorb up to 700 Iranian ballistic missiles, that the price will be extraordinarily high, but that they can survive the political price if the regime is eliminated. So Israel's at the point where they're willing to make an existential gamble that they can absorb what normally would be lethal amounts of damage if the regime is removed. But the gamble there is what happens if the regime isn't removed? What happens if they're compelled to absorb 700 or more ballistic missiles and the regime is there? Now, the Israeli government will collapse. And with it, perhaps the Israeli experiment. I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but why else do we have Israeli Defense Forces going to Patagonia, lighting places on fire and buying it up if it's not a plan B for the possibility of plan A collapsing? There's a reason why Herzl talked about Argentina.
They can set up next to Colonial Dignidad.
Yeah, so
the Nazi colony that they have in Argentina, they can set up next to that. No, but here's my question: Can America take the blowback? Here's my question: Hashd al-Shabi in Iraq, you have the Zainabiyun, the Fatimiyun, you have Hezbollah in Lebanon, American assets all over the Middle East. Can you pick up 200, 300 body bags? That's my question. Can you take domestic terror attack? 200, 300 body bags from the Middle East?
America. Again, now I'm going to sound like a cowboy here.
No, this is what we pay for, man.
Probably don't like, but let me just put it this way. Have you been to the United States?
I had a visa. I never came as a teenager.
Okay, well, if you ever come to the United States, and I hope you do,
Inshallah.
I understand the difficulties, but I certainly hope you do.
Inshallah.
I would love to take you out and show you my country.
But
in Washington, D.C., we have a monument, the Marine Corps Monument. It shows Marines raising the flag on Mount Suribachi, on Iwo Jima. You know how many thousands of Marines gave their lives for that tiny dot? The Marine Corps, we celebrate battles like the Battle of Tarawa, where we had our Marines leave the ships a mile and a half out and have to wade through chest-deep water to get to the Japanese, and how many thousands of bodies we left in the water there. We can take the losses. We ain't afraid of dying.
No, I don't.
Now
I don't doubt the army, sir. I don't doubt the Marines, sir. I mean the political capital.
Well, if we are in a struggle that we determine to be existential in nature, you will have to kill us all to win. There's a perception in the world today that if you kill enough of us, we run. But that's because we don't believe in what we're actually doing. We're not going to commit national suicide for Iraq, for Afghanistan, for Syria, for Lebanon, for Iran. It just isn't going to happen. So with Iran, if we get in a situation where 240 body bags come home, we may very well walk away. We walked away from Vietnam. It was a national embarrassment, a national humiliation, but it didn't destroy us. We just moved on. So I'm not worried about America. Woe be it the nation that thinks that they can put us in an existential fight and have us surrender after killing 240 of us. We will never stop. In the state of Missouri, we have basements full of young men who do nothing but eat raw meat and spend all day dreaming of ways to get out of that basement and kill people around the world today. There are enough lunatic Americans out there who will put on the uniform and go forth and kill, not for the right reasons, just because they will be told you can kill in the name of America. So don't mess with America unless you're willing to pay the price.
I allowed you that bit, but We've had our hurrahs as well. I don't want to. I don't want to toot our horn. My point is, I completely respect the American military might and understand the machinery, and I respect the men behind the machinery, the flesh and blood, like you mentioned with Hamas earlier, and you clearly respect that in your opponents and in your allies and in people around the world.
I don't want these fights. I'm not seeking these
That's
fights.
what it is. That's what I'm saying. Is that does Washington have the political capital to absorb those blows? Will it ever be treated as an existential fight? Are Americans on ground so motivated in their hatred of Iran? Like you mentioned, within the state, there are people of your generation who have that memory of the desecration of American bodies by the Iranian regime. And you have this certain vision of from film and TV from the 80s and 90s and maybe up till the thousands. But does the American on ground, do the current Americans have such a deep existential hatred of Iran or a perceived threat from Iran that they would maybe
Not
they
for
would
us
fear
to go out and seek, not
Yeah.
to seek a fight,
No.
not to seek a fight. Again, there's a difference between saying we need to be friends with these people, and America say no, I don't want to be friends with these people. But when we start sending American youth to go overseas to fight and die, we don't have the appetite for that because it's not existential. So I'm not. If I were the Middle East, I would not be worried about America sending millions of Americans over to the Middle East in search of enemies. We're not going to do that. We'll
No, but
bomb
if you bomb the Iranian regime and God forbid it collapses and Iran splinters into like a million pieces like a Libya or an Iraq or whatever, we're dealing with Shia militias like an ISIS you've never seen before.
but we don't care because they'll just be killing other Muslims.
No, but then that's true. But they would also end up targeting a significant amount of American interest in the region, no? Is that part in the blowback sort of scheme? You think you'll be fine?
I mean, maybe, but let me just put it this way. Money, I used to get very angry at Western oilmen. I used to attend these conferences as a advisory board member, and they'd have discussions about energy security and all that. And I was, again, I'm a Louis L'Amour cowboy kind of guy, and I was always like, we have to obey the rules. We have to play by the rules. The rule of law means something. And these oilmen would just look at me going, what are you talking about? There are no rules. We just bring in enough money. We buy everybody and it's done. We get what we want. And I said, at some point in time, you're going to come up against an enemy that can't be bought. And that's what's happened in the Middle East. In Iran, they haven't been able to buy the Iranians. You weren't able to buy, Iraqi resistance. You couldn't buy them out. But that's because the issues that they were confronting locally were existential in nature. So they were willing to fight and die for this cause. But what happens, and we've seen this everywhere, what happens when the fight stops and the physical, and now you're there left holding the bag and all you got is oil in the ground. You're going to do whatever it takes to turn that oil into money, and you will sell your soul to the businesses. This is how America and this is how the West will always control the Middle East until the Middle East takes control of its own economic future. As long as the Middle East is dependent upon Western entities to gain access to their resources, bring those resources out, bring them to market, I will always be able to buy you, as long as I'm not trying to invade and occupy you.
So the abduction of a Maduro, or you mentioned energy security, right? So the abduction of a Maduro, or the securing of the North and South America, or the Western Hemisphere. I mean, American energy security to me as an outsider has always been a myth. I'll be first to say it's always been a myth. It's always been a myth sold by businessmen who don't believe in the rules, like you mentioned. America's infinitely energy secure compared to any other point on earth, and
Infinitely
energy secure. Like their dependence on Middle Eastern oil.
Yeah.
Like even when in the time of Faisal sort of showing off and flexing their muscles with the oil embargo, even that to me is more performative than any real sort of energy crisis that the Americans could actually face. It was simply the oil men turning on the heat for the average American to let them know that there's things outside of America that we need to manage. That's what it seems to me like as an
Well,
outsider.
it was the oil men exploiting. It was the oil men exploiting the system as it existed.
As it existed, yeah. So when you pick up a Maduro and you're like, it was always about, the oil, and in the neighboring regions you have all these, I don't know, it was a female general equivalent to a general ranking officer from American, I think the State Department or somebody. This woman was talking about the very fertile triangle next to Venezuela.
Laura Richardson, she
Yes.
was the general of U.S. Southern Command. Yeah.
Yes. It was very amusing for me to see a female general.
When she said that the lithium triangle belongs to us.
To us, and yeah, that was something special. That's all I'll say. And then again,
He believes it.
no, Trump believes it when he comes up and says that. He was talking about manifest destiny, a very perverted version of that, South America is ours, oil is ours, the resources are ours. You have young people who are so-called anti-war guys on the right, like Nick Fuentes, celebrating that, this is it. This is our, like the earlier question I asked you, which was that maybe some element of you is proud of, that this is our machine. But you said, I'm not proud of an empty structure. I'm going to be proud of something I built with my own hands that I trust in every single, on every single level from the ground up. And that's admirable, but I don't think that's a quality universally enjoyed in
No,
American.
it's not, because you said, I mean, look, I'm a boomer. I'm a dying generation, man. We're not getting more, we're getting less. And I'm at the young age of the boomers. We're dying out. And what comes after us are people that don't share those post-war values. How artificial they may be or whatever, the dream, the Louis L'Amour dream. He wrote most of his books in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That was a period of time of the American dream. It hadn't died yet.
Affluence,
But now we have, you hit the nail on the head. We have a generation of Americans that stand for nothing more than their next sexual conquest, their next tab of ecstasy, their next orgy, their next whatever. What is that? What does that mean? That means that they don't stand for anything of value, that it's all about the excesses of the human spirit, that they're not building anything to last, because humans are we are a finite commodity. We die, so the only thing that gives us immortality is what we leave to the next generation. That which we build that can stand, that's last, that has value, that we turn over to a generation that respects that value, understands that value, and seeks to build upon that so that we have a society worth living in. But when you have a generation who views what exists only as a mechanism of their personal, the excesses of humanity, they're not building anything. They're leeching off of that which others have built. They're not strengthening it. They're weakening it, and eventually that's going to collapse because they're not doing anything to keep that structure in place. And that's where we are today, where we have a population that isn't building an America. It's a population leeching off that which was built by others. And they're draining it of its life's blood. And in many ways, Donald Trump is, what is the deficit? Again, I'm not an economist, and I'm sure, you'll come up with something that the deficit is meaningless because in the end of the day, maybe. But I'm a guy that lives, this is my wallet. I have credit cards. These credit cards mean that I can go out and I can charge and I can buy things. But at some point in time, the bill becomes due. And if I can't pay the credit card, then I'm in financial distress. America today, and I had this credit card, but, sometimes that gets maxed out, so then I got to use this credit card. If that gets maxed out, I've got one more I can use. But if that gets maxed out, I got nothing. I'm done. I'm finished. And if I'm not bringing enough money to pay the bill, I collapse. Donald Trump's just maxing out the credit cards right now. We're not building anything. When you go deeper in debt, you're not building anything. You're just living an excessive lifestyle. And that's it. The way a family is succeeding is when the husband and wife go to work and they earn a paycheck and they come home and they pay their bills, they make home improvements, and they have money in the bank afterwards. That's success. But when you have people come out and they work simply to pay off debts that they'll never be able to pay off, that's not success. You can't build on that. And that's America today. We're a nation that's just out of control, spending wise.
I mean, like, I don't want to be the guy who wags his finger at you, but isn't that what your generation and the one before built America to be? Like, I don't want to knock on young people who are, like we described, very self-indulgent, but this global economic system of just infinite, the infinite loop of debt. You guys,
it's not what I built them to be, because I've
sure. I mean,
I personally,
that wasn't your job.
I know what
right?
you're saying, my generation, but I'm trying to figure out in answering it this way. I'm trying to figure out, because I recognize what you're saying. This is a system that achieved a life of its own. This debt-driven system. Now, here's where you need PhD economists to come in and explain to me how this happened and why this happened. But as an American citizen who promoted this system, I was always trained to believe that you pay your debts and that you don't live in excess of your means, that, if you make X amount of money, you live to X amount of money. And if you want to live bigger, make more money, work harder, earn your way up. But then we started by, again, I'm the Reagan generation, what the hell was, what was it? Supply side economics, what was that?
Economics, yeah.
It's a myth. Basically, it allowed us to start to borrow money and built on the promise of growth. So what would happen would be the equivalent of me telling my wife, honey, I got my current job. I make this amount of money, but at some point in time, I'm going to become a millionaire. So we're going to live the millionaire lifestyle while I await to become a millionaire. And that's what America was. We said we want to rapidly move, whether it's in arms, to build weapons, etc. We started living a lifestyle that we couldn't afford. And so we started borrowing on the premise that growth would end up paying for it. That's what Donald Trump is talking about. He didn't blink at all when someone confronted him with the fact that we're, $38 trillion in debt. How are you going to pay this debt? He said through growth. And then he started talking about tariffs and about, building factories that don't exist. And I mean, this fantasy. And that's what the American dream has become, a literal dream, as opposed to Louis L'Amour reality, earning it, working. We simply live in a fantasy world where we aspire to be something, but we're not doing the work to become that which we aspire to. We simply max out the credit cards. And now what Donald Trump does, he just prints more credit cards. It's crazy.
I mean, this infinite money supply situation, it affects all of us. Like, when Donald Trump talks about this stuff, we know it's going to trickle down. The trickle-down economics is real in that it'll trickle down to us, everybody who's dollar dependent and has to have that as an exchange reserve, as a reserve of exchange. And Iran feels the pain. Like, when you talk about Iran specifically, it feels the pain of that squeezing, as the dollar being the pole currency. America's done this to itself. I'm not, nobody's gonna weep for it. Maybe you might, because obviously, you're an American and you believe in it. But in all of this, we've decided that America is going to shift itself into a regional empire. It's going to do all of this. And right now, the American landscape and the youth is being radicalized by the right, primarily. This is what I see. A lot of young people, because we've described the young people, you said you're a boomer, respectfully so, you said it. And so you're a homeowner, but a young person is not in America. So you've seen a lot of polarization and culture in American society. And what I've observed is, as an outsider, is that a lot of young people are going towards the right in some sort of ethnic or nationalist identitarian style, which a lot of it seems like a psyop to me, because that's what the government does here. So if I just apply the third world over there, which it just makes sense to me that, these guys are controlling the dialogue or the discourse in America. But that is the default. There is a reason why Tucker Carlson comes off of the Fox News and on YouTube he does multi-million views, because that's where the American society is on an emotional, psychological, political level, spiritually even. You have a young guy like Nick Fuentes come out of the Zionist incubators in university, and then pop onto the scene with, he's a larger than life personality, and you can't cancel him, and he has millions and millions and millions of views, and Donald Trump directly speaks to him on the phone and flies him on his plane, and all of this. All of these characters on the right, they purported to be, I mean, obviously you consider yourself to somebody on the left, right? But all these characters on the right, again, it's a weird characterization, but you're anti-war. All these people on the right want to reimagine America, and that's what's happening. You're reimagining what America is going to be. This is that moment. But the moment America steps down into the slogfest, into the mud, and starts engaging in war, everybody seems to be on board. And this is going to be the last thing because I've taken up a lot of your time. What do you think this is? Where do you think this is going? Like, where is the American right going? Are they really anti-war? Is there any real anti-war sentiment in America? Like, even the left in America, I'm very sorry, but like even on the left, when I compare it, like,
there's no anti-war sentiment in America. There's none. The left has used anti-war for political purposes, meaning
like domestic wins.
They disgrace themselves. When Obama started butchering people with drones, the left was silent. So they were only anti-war what is to their political benefit. They don't truly believe in anti-war. They're just a different version of the American empire. The right is not anti-war. Hell, we're the right's the most bloodthirsty part of American society. They're just anti-war if the war doesn't promote the outcomes they want. But to be anti-war in America, and this is what I've learned, to be anti-war in America, there's two things you have to be willing to do. The first thing is you have to be willing to understand that as proud as you are of being an American, you are an equal among equals in the world. And that's the only way you can be anti-war, because if you believe that America is somehow, exceptional, that means the rules don't apply to us. That means that we get to dictate outcomes to others. And that's fine when we're having a discussion. But if I believe that I am exceptional and that you must be subordinated to me, I can approach you and we can enter into a dialogue. But as we get down to the nitty gritty and you're not yielding, I'm just going to kick your ass, because that's what I'm supposed to do as the superior. The only time that I won't take that approach is when I view you as an equal. And I give your opinions the same value as I give my opinions, and then we learn to work ourselves out. So until Americans are willing to step off their high horse, or the way I like to do it is promote everybody up to my horse. I don't want to step down. I just want to promote you up. I just want you to say, I'm proud of who I am. So I'm not going to diminish myself. I'm proud of who I am. But what I'm going to do is treat you with the same respect I treat myself, treat you as my equal. And then we can have a conversation. Then we can live in peace. Then we can work things out. And that's the first requirement, and is to realize that we're not the supreme being. But the second thing we have to do is realize that the rest of the world are not inherently inferior as well. I mean, there's a level of racism in America today, and it's not just black and white. It's American versus non-American. We tend to believe that everything American touches is gold. We it's like the Midas touch. We touch it, it's gold. And if you touch it, it's not gold. So therefore, why do I want to let you touch it? You're my equal, but stay out of the way. Hi, you're my equal. I treat you equal, but stay out of the way. No, I've got this under control. We have to treat you, and America's not going to do that. The left is the most elitist group of people in the world today. They are elite snobs. They are snobs about America. And trust me, you think Hillary Clinton believes in a fair and equal world? No.
I know Hillary Clinton, dude. Come on, man.
Yeah, so no.
We know her in Pakistan.
And the right, again, the limitations of the right is they want to say that they're anti-war in areas where we don't have an existential interest. But when it comes to Greenland, or when it comes to, man, we'll just throw that military might around all we want. I mean, I have yet to see somebody on the right say, stop building B-2 bombers. Stop building aircraft carriers. Stop building ballistic missile submarines. See, I believe in that. Stop it. Why do we need it? If I treat you as an equal, why do I need a bomber to blow you off the face of the earth? That's not how equals deal with one another. Equals deal with one another morally, ethically, intellectually, based upon an agreed framework of rules and regulations. That the pen is mightier than the sword. And when Americans truly believe that, then they're anti-war. But Americans don't believe that. That's why America is the most warlike society in the world today, because we continue to believe that we are superior and you are inferior, and that's the relationship that must exist. Donald Trump believes in that more than anybody else, in the supremacy, not just of Donald Trump, but America. It's the most insulting thing in the world. I understand make America great again. I get it. Who doesn't want their country? But, Pakistan can say, make Pakistan great again. I admire that. But I don't believe Pakistan would ever come across that could ever be terminated or translated into Pakistan über alles. Pakistan supreme over everybody. In the United States, make America great again means make America supreme over the world. And that means that we will always be in conflict with the world, because the world will inherently resist being subordinated to an American hegemon.
That was Scott Ritter. He's an American, and he wants to reimagine America in the image of a Louis L'Amour novel. Scott Ritter, sir, you were very kind to us today. Yeah, I think it was a different style of discussion. It was less about the movements of military units and moves